I was 60 when it happened, just an ordinary morning in our quiet house. I was pouring coffee in my old plaid robe, the same one I'd worn 100 times before. My husband sat at the table reading the newspaper as usual. No small talk, no good morning kiss, just the sound of the kettle and rustling pages. And then he looked up. I almost didn't notice at first, but his eyes lingered, really lingered. He tilted his head slightly, narrowed his eyes like he was trying to solve a puzzle, and then out of nowhere he said something I hadn't heard in decades. "You look really attractive this morning." I stood there frozen. My hand trembled just slightly as I set the coffee pot down. I didn't say anything, didn't even smile. I just stared at him, trying to figure out if he was joking, or worse, mistaking me for someone else. Attractive? Me? It had been so long since I'd heard that word directed at me that it felt foreign, almost suspicious. I wanted to believe him, but part of me was afraid to. Because the truth is, I had stopped being seen a long time ago. He used to notice everything, the perfume I wore, the way I curled my hair, how I hummed when I brushed my teeth. But somewhere along the way, I became invisible. Not suddenly. Slowly, like a curtain gently falling over a window. One year melted into the next, the kids left, birthdays passed, and eventually I just became background. A quiet presence in a shared space, necessary, but not really noticed. I don't remember when I stopped looking in the mirror with hope, when I stopped putting on lipstick just because, or when I gave up trying new things with my hair. All I know is I stopped expecting to be admired. And worse, I stopped admiring myself. That morning, when he looked at me like a man seeing something he liked, it shook something loose inside me. Not just surprise, but curiosity. What had changed? And then I realized it wasn't one big transformation. It wasn't a trip to the spa or a makeover. It was 5 little things I had started doing, quietly, almost privately. 5 beauty habits that most women my age ignore, because we're told we've aged out of beauty. But these 5 habits, they changed everything. Not just the way I looked, but the way I felt. And yes, even the way he looked at me. So if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if the mirror feels like a stranger, if you're tired of waiting for someone else to notice you, I hope you'll stay with me. Because these 5 beauty habits didn't just revive my reflection, they brought me back to life. And before we dive in, if this speaks to you in any way, tap that like button so I know I'm not alone. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now, because I promise, the first tip coming up is so simple, so overlooked, it just might change your entire glow. Tip 1. Hydration. The first thing I changed was so small, I didn't even think it would matter. Honestly, it didn't feel like a beauty habit at all. It felt boring, but it turned out to be the foundation for everything that followed. It started when I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror one morning. Not on purpose. I had leaned in to grab my moisturizer and there I was. And I didn't like what I saw. My skin looked dull, tired, almost gray. No matter how much cream I used, it never seemed to sink in. I had started skipping makeup altogether because nothing sat right on my face anymore. It cracked, it caked, it aged me more. So I stopped bothering. What was the point? That same afternoon, I was flipping through an old magazine I found tucked behind cookbooks in the pantry, probably from 10 years ago. And there was a small line in one of the articles that said something like, "Dehydration is the one cause of aging skin over 50. Most women don't drink enough water." I laughed. I mean, I drank plenty coffee in the morning. A glass of wine at dinner. That counted, right? But that line stuck in my head. That night I searched hydration after 60 on my phone. One article turned into 3, then 5. I learned that after a certain age, our bodies don't signal thirst the same way. And I realized something embarrassing. I hadn't had plain water in maybe 2 days. Maybe more. So I made one tiny promise to myself, 8 glasses a day. No skipping. I even made it pretty. Lemon water in the morning. A pitcher of cucumber and mint water on the kitchen counter. Herbal teas at night. I started eating more watermelon, celery, even oranges. It felt gentle, quiet. No big reveal, no instant result. But about 2 weeks in, something unexpected happened. I walked into the kitchen in my usual robe, hair still a mess, no makeup, just me, groggy and ordinary. I poured myself a cup of tea, and as I turned, my husband looked up from his paper. His brow furrowed slightly. Then he said, "You look rested, younger, even." I didn't say anything. I just stirred my tea like nothing happened. But inside, I was glowing brighter than my skin. Because for years the only thing he noticed about my face was how tired it looked. "Are you okay?" he'd ask. "You look pale. Or worse, you look like you didn't sleep." But now, he saw something soft, something different. He didn't know it was water. I didn't tell him. I didn't need to. That quiet compliment, that shift in his tone was enough to tell me I was doing something right. Hydration didn't just change my skin. It changed the way I felt in my skin. It made my face softer, plumper, fresher. The lines didn't vanish, but they blurred. My cheeks had a glow that no highlighter could fake. And perhaps most importantly, I felt like I had taken the very first step back to myself. So many women my age skip this. We think skincare starts in the bottle, but the truth is, it starts in the glass. Comment 1 if hydration is something you often forget too. You'll be amazed how much it can change after 60. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next tip that quietly woke my whole face back up. Tip 2. Facial massage with oil. The second change came one night when I couldn't sleep. It was past midnight, and my husband was snoring softly beside me, the house dark and quiet except for the ticking clock. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling restless. Not just tired, but disconnected. Like I was living in a body I didn't recognize anymore. I picked up my phone, hoping a few videos would lull me to sleep. I scrolled past recipes, news clips, and then, there she was. A woman, maybe in her 70s, sitting in front of her bathroom mirror, gently massaging her face with oil. Her hands moved in slow, loving circles, not rushed, not self-conscious. It wasn't about vanity. It looked like care, soft, deliberate self-care. Something about that moment stirred me. Maybe it was how peaceful she looked, or maybe it was the way she touched her own skin like she still deserved to be cherished. I didn't think. I just got up, walked to the bathroom, found a tiny bottle of rosehip oil I hadn't used in months, and stood in front of the mirror. I warmed the oil between my fingers and slowly brought my hands to my face. At first it felt strange. My cheeks felt unfamiliar. The skin under my eyes was softer than I remembered. Thinner too. I traced upward motions along my jawline, over my forehead, around my eyes. And as my hands moved, so did something inside me. I began to remember the woman I used to be. The one who got ready for date nights, who smiled at her reflection without flinching, who felt beautiful without apology. I did it again the next night. And the one after that. Just 2 minutes. No pressure. Just presence. After a week, I noticed something subtle but real. The puffiness under my eyes eased. My cheeks felt firmer. My face looked brighter. Not because I'd turned back time, but because I had finally stopped neglecting it. And then one evening, something happened. We were watching an old movie on the couch. The kind we've seen a dozen times. He usually stares at the screen, half dozing off. But that night, he wasn't looking at the TV. He was looking at me. Not a quick glance. A stare. The kind you feel. He leaned in, squinting slightly. "Did you do something to your face?" he asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. "You look lifted, like you got a facial or something." I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. I just smiled and said, "Nope, just trying something new." Because that's all it was, something new. No spa, no surgery, just 2 fingers, 2 minutes, and a bottle of oil. But what really surprised me wasn't that he noticed. It was how he noticed. His voice softened. He shifted closer. He rested his hand on my leg again that night, casually, like he used to. And I realized this small act, this tiny bedtime ritual, wasn't just lifting my skin. It was lifting the wall that had grown between us. One night, one touch, one quiet reconnection at a time. So if you've stopped feeling seen, if your reflection feels more like a stranger than a friend, try touching your own face again, not to fix it, but to remind yourself it's still yours. Comment 2. If this surprised you, would you try 2 minutes of oil massage before bed for a week? It's free, it's powerful, and it might just bring something back you didn't know you'd lost. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because the next tip gave my skin life and color again, and it's one most women never question. Tip 3. Switching to cream-based makeup. The third thing I changed was something I didn't expect to matter so much: my makeup, or rather how I was still applying it like I was in my 30s. It had become muscle memory: powder foundation, pressed blush, a matte lipstick I'd swipe on without looking. Back then, it worked. But slowly, over the years, I noticed something was off. My face started looking duller, flatter, older than I felt inside. I'd finish getting ready, look in the mirror, and feel defeated. The powder clung to every crease like it was trying to spotlight my age. It settled into lines I didn't even know I had. My blush made my cheeks look dry and papery, not rosy. And the lipstick, it cracked by lunchtime, clinging to the wrong places. Eventually, I stopped bothering. I told myself, what's the point? It's just makeup. And I started to avoid my reflection altogether. But after I started drinking more water and massaging my face each night, something inside me stirred. A quiet confidence, a flicker of curiosity. And with that came a small rebellion. What if I stopped doing what I'd always done? What if I tried something meant for the skin I have now, not the skin I had 30 years ago? I watched a few videos made by women closer to my age. Real women, not celebrities. And I learned something shocking. Powder is the enemy of aging skin. It doesn't blur, it exposes. It clings to every dry patch, every fine line, like a spotlight on the things we wish would fade. So I cleared out my drawer. Every compact, every chalky blush, gone. I replaced it with 3 simple things: a tinted moisturizer that felt like a second skin, a cream blush in a soft rose shade, and a lip balm with just a hint of color. No brushes, no fuss, just my fingers and a few dabs of softness. The first time I tried the new routine, I was stunned. I looked in the mirror and saw warmth, glow, not fake youth, but real light. My skin looked like skin again, not a mask. My cheeks had a flush, not a stamp of color. And for the first time in years, I caught myself smiling before I walked away from the mirror. Later that day, we were getting ready to run errands. I grabbed my purse and keys while my husband put on his shoes. I wasn't trying to impress him. I had done this for me. But as I turned to head out the door, he paused, stared, even. "You're blushing," he said. I blinked. "No, I'm not." He grinned just slightly. "Well, you look like you are." I turned away so he wouldn't see how wide I smiled. Because that moment, it felt like a gift. He didn't know it was cream blush. He thought it was emotion, maybe even attraction. And in some small way, maybe it was. Because I didn't just look different. I felt different. That's the thing about cream makeup. It doesn't cover you. It enhances you. It moves with your skin. It catches the light, not the flaws. And it brought me back to life, one fingertip at a time. Comment 3. If you've used powder makeup for years like I did. I had no idea it was making me look older, until I let it go. And if you're learning something new here, subscribe right now, so you never miss the kind of beauty advice no one tells us after 60. Because the next change, it came from the most surprising feature of all: my eyebrows. Tip 4. Eyebrow revival. The fourth change I made snuck up on me. It wasn't something I noticed overnight. It wasn't even something I thought about, really. until one afternoon I stumbled across an old photo. It was from my early 40s. I was laughing, holding a glass of wine at a backyard party. My eyes were bright, lifted, playful, and there they were, my eyebrows, full, defined, with a natural arch that brought my whole face to life. I set the photo next to a recent one my daughter had snapped of me at a family brunch. Same face, same woman, but something was missing. Not just smoothness or glow, it was structure. My face looked heavier somehow. Sadder, tired, even though I wasn't tired at all. I leaned closer and realized my eyebrows had all but vanished. Years of thinning, lightening, fading into my skin tone had erased the very frame of my face, and I hadn't even noticed. I'd just blamed age, gravity, time. But what I had really lost was definition. So that week, during a quiet trip to the store, I picked up two small things, a soft taupe brow pencil and a tinted brow gel. I came home, stood in front of my mirror, and gave myself a tiny tutorial. I didn't try to draw anything dramatic, no Instagram brows or sharp lines, just small feathery strokes to fill in the gaps, following the shape I already had. Then a little gel to hold it all in place. It took 3 minutes. But when I stepped back and looked at my reflection, I blinked. My eyes looked more open. My face looked lifted, not in some dramatic surgical way, but in a refreshed way. Like the curtains had been pulled back and light had returned to the window. That night, I was curled up in bed reading when he walked into the room. The lamp beside me was on. My glasses were off. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, but he stopped at the door, stared for a second longer than usual, tilted his head. "Did you change your hair or something?" he asked. "You look different, in a good way." I didn't say a word. I just smiled and turned a page. What he didn't realize, and what so many women don't, is that eyebrows are one of the most powerful beauty tools we have. They frame the eyes, they shape the expression, they signal emotion, presence, engagement. When they disappear, we disappear a little too. Reviving my brows wasn't about pretending to be younger. It was about reclaiming the details that time had quietly erased. And the change, it wasn't just visible. It was felt. He didn't know what was different, but he noticed, and after years of being overlooked, that alone felt like a miracle. Comment 4. If this eyebrow tip was a light bulb moment for you, it changed my whole expression. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because it's time we start reclaiming the beauty that's always been ours. You won't want to miss what happened when I finally turned my attention to the one feature that once made me feel radiant: my hair. Tip 5. Hair revival. The last thing I changed was the very thing I used to love most about myself: my hair. When I was younger, it was my signature. Thick, wavy, full of life. I used to toss it over my shoulder and feel beautiful without even trying. My husband used to run his fingers through it when we were lying on the couch. He'd say things like, "Your hair smells good," or "I love when you wear it down like that." But somewhere along the way, all of that faded, just like my hair itself. Over the years, it thinned. The bounce disappeared. The color dulled into a tired mix of gray and brown that never looked quite right. I kept the same part I had for decades, not realizing how flat and lifeless it had become. It wasn't just my hair that had lost its shape. It was me. My confidence, my femininity, my spark. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who was slowly fading into the background. But the worst part, he stopped noticing it too. No compliments, no touches, no looks. I remember one day asking, almost jokingly, should I try something new with my hair? And he just shrugged and said, "Do what you want." Not cruel, just indifferent. And for a woman who once felt beautiful from just a glance, that indifference cut deeper than any insult ever could. So after I had made all the other changes, my skin, my brows, my makeup, I decided my hair deserved some love too. I booked an afternoon appointment at the salon. I didn't want anything dramatic. I told the stylist, "I don't want to look younger, I want to look alive." She understood instantly. We chose warm caramel highlights to blend into the gray instead of covering it. She trimmed long layers to bring back movement. Then she flipped my part to the opposite side, showed me how to use a little mousse at the roots, and sent me home with a bounce I hadn't felt in years, not just in my hair, but in my step. I didn't say a word when I walked into the house. I just set my purse down and started making dinner. But from behind me, I heard him stop in the hallway. I felt his eyes on me before he spoke. "Your hair," he said slowly. "Wow, it looks amazing. Did you go to a salon?" I turned, smiled softly, and said, "Yeah, just felt like a little change." But that wasn't the moment that broke me open. That came later when we were sitting on the couch that evening, watching a show I can't even remember. Without saying anything, he reached over and ran his fingers through my hair, gently, like he used to. And I froze, not because it felt strange, but because I had almost forgotten how powerful that kind of touch could be. Tender, intentional, loving. Hair is tied to so much more than style. It's tied to memory, to emotion, to identity. And for me, reviving my hair was the final piece of the puzzle. The last step in a quiet transformation I didn't think was still possible. Comment 5, if you believe hair can change the way you carry yourself. It did for me. And if you're not already subscribed, do it now. We're building a space where beauty over 60 is seen, honored, and celebrated. And in the closing part, I want to tell you something that matters more than any cream, pencil, or product, because the biggest transformation wasn't what he saw. It was what I remembered about myself. Looking back now, I'm still amazed that it wasn't some grand transformation that brought me back into focus. It wasn't plastic surgery. It wasn't a crash diet. It wasn't anything loud or dramatic. It was 5 quiet changes, small rituals that I started for myself, not for him. A glass of water in the morning, 2 minutes of oil before bed, cream blush on my cheeks, a brow pencil, a flipped hair part, and a little lift at the roots. That's it. But those 5 little habits, they gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. My reflection, my confidence, my glow. For years I thought the distance between my husband and me was just what happened with age. I assumed that the long silences, the missed compliments, the lack of affection were just normal, that we fade, that we blend into the background after 60. And so, I wore that belief like a second skin. I didn't fight it, I accepted it. Until one morning, he looked at me again. Really looked. But here's the part I never expected to discover. The real change wasn't in him, it was in me. He started noticing because I started showing up differently. I walked taller. I smiled more at him, at myself, at strangers in the store. I wore my skin like it mattered again. I walked into rooms like I deserved to be there. And that energy, that's what he responded to. That's what anyone responds to. The quiet fire in a woman who remembers her worth. No, I didn't become younger, but I became something even more powerful, present, visible, vibrant. So if you've been feeling unseen lately, like you're slowly becoming invisible, I hope you try even just one of these habits. Not to impress anyone, not to win anyone back, but to wake yourself up again. Because the most beautiful kind of transformation isn't the one that erases your years, it's the one that lets your light back in. If this story touched you, even in a small way, don't keep it to yourself. Tap that like button so I know these kinds of stories matter to you. And if you've ever felt invisible, unappreciated, or just want to feel radiant again, leave a comment below and tell me which of these 5 habits will you try first. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more real stories, beauty wisdom, and confidence boosters made just for women over 60. Because aging doesn't mean fading. It means rising, glowing, and rewriting the rules in your own way. Until next time, stay graceful, stay powerful, and remember, It's never too late to be seen.